If I lose her today, I don't think I'll know who I am anymore. That was the only thought racing through Richard Carter's mind as he stood in the courthouse hallway, his palms cold, his throat dry, the world around him spinning like a carousel he couldn't step off. Just behind the heavy oak doors, a judge he'd never met was about to decide if he could legally call Emily his daughter, or if this fragile, beautiful life they'd built together would be torn apart by bureaucracy and bloodlines. He could still hear her voice from that morning trembling as she asked, "What if the judge says no?" He hadn't let it show, but inside the fear was eating him alive. How did a man like him, once obsessed with power numbers and headlines, end up fighting for bedtime stories, braid practice, and a little girl's smile? Stay with us, because what happens inside that courtroom will not only leave you breathless, but may just change the way you believe in love, family, and what it truly means to choose someone forever. It was the kind of night when even the city lights seemed tired, dim, half-hearted flickers, reflected in puddles left behind by a cold spring rain. Richard Carter, 32, walked out of an upscale restaurant in downtown Chicago with the collar of his coat turned up and his heart heavier than usual. Behind him, his business partner Michael Harris was still ranting about finalizing a $20 million deal with investors from Tokyo. "We're about to lose the contract," Richard Michael had shouted. "Do you even care anymore?" He didn't answer, not because he didn't care, but because something inside him, something buried for years beneath deadlines, quarterly profits, and luxury penthouses, had snapped. Or maybe cracked just enough to let something real in. The icy wind bit his face as he walked past the restaurant windows. Families laughed inside, clinking glasses and cutting into steaks. Then he saw her. A little girl no older than 6 sat on the edge of the sidewalk, hugging a worn-out teddy bear. Her clothes were too thin for the weather, her hair tangled, but it was her eyes that stopped him, wide, dark, and too still for a child. "Are you all right?" Richard asked, kneeling slowly so he wouldn't startle her. She looked at him carefully, as if she were sizing up whether he was safe. Then she said in a voice soft and heartbreakingly honest, "It's my birthday today, but nobody cares." Richard's breath caught. "Where are your parents?" "My mom's in heaven," she said, "and my stepdad said he didn't want me anymore." Just like that. No tears, no drama, just cold truth from a child too used to being forgotten. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emily." "I'm Richard." "You look like someone important," she said. He chuckled despite the lump forming in his throat. "I used to think so." "Can I ask you something?" she said, glancing nervously at the restaurant. "Can I spend my birthday with you? I just don't want to be alone tonight." That question hit harder than anything Michael had shouted earlier. Richard stared at her, and in that 1 second something shifted inside him. "Are you hungry, Emily?" She nodded quickly. "A lot. But I don't have money." "Well, I do. Come on, let's get you something to eat." As she stood up and gently took his hand, she added, "Teddy too, right? Of course. He's family." They walked for 2 blocks in silence. She held Teddy tightly like it was her only anchor in the world. "Do you have family, Mr. Richard?" He hesitated. "I have a father, but we don't talk much." "Why not?" "Because he thinks success is more important than people." She nodded, then looked up. "Maybe that's why you're alone on your birthday too." He laughed softly. "It's not my birthday, but you're not wrong." They ended up at a small, warm corner diner with soft yellow lights and wood-paneled walls, the kind of place that still smelled like fresh pies. "Ever had a hamburger?" Richard asked as they settled into a booth. Emily shook her head. "I don't even know what it tastes like." His heart twisted. He ordered her a cheeseburger with fries and chicken nuggets, just coffee for himself. "You're not eating?" she asked, frowning. "I'm not that hungry." She looked at him, eyes serious. "When I didn't have food, I was always hungry. Always." Richard paused, ashamed. Then he called the waitress back and ordered a plate of pancakes. The food came. Emily just stared at it. "Is everything okay?" he asked. It's so much," she whispered. "I don't know if I'm allowed to eat this much." "You're allowed. Eat as much as you want. It's your birthday." She bit into the burger, her eyes closing in bliss. "It's the best thing I've ever had." Richard smiled, a real one, the first in months. Then something happened. A man sitting near the counter stood up abruptly, his hand deep in another customer's purse. Emily spotted it first. "Sir," she said loudly, "that man took her wallet." Everyone turned. The thief bolted but slipped on the wet tile and was caught. The woman turned to Emily, stunned. "You're a hero, sweetheart." Richard stared at her. Even after all she'd been through, Emily's first instinct was to protect a stranger. Back at the table, he said quietly, "That was really brave." She shrugged. "My mom said being kind doesn't cost anything." He nodded slowly. "Your mom was right." Just then, Michael called again. Richard stared at the screen's 6 missed calls, a voicemail. The Tokyo investors were backing out. He hit decline. Emily took a long sip of her milkshake and looked out the window. "This is the best birthday ever," she said, still clutching Teddy. Richard looked at her, this little soul thrown into the world with nothing, and felt a clarity he hadn't known in years. He made a decision. When they left the diner, he didn't take her back to the corner she came from. Instead, he said, "Emily, how would you like to sleep in a real bed tonight, with warm blankets and hot water?" Her eyes widened. "With you if you want." She nodded slowly. "I do." And when they reached the building, when she stepped inside the marble-floored lobby and whispered, "It's like a castle," Richard knew this night. This choice had changed something fundamental in him, but he also knew the hardest part was still ahead. Thank you for following Emily and Richard's story so far. What would you have done if you were Richard, walked away or stayed? Let me know in the comments, and if this touched your heart, please like the video to help us reach more people. That night, long after Emily had fallen asleep, wrapped in warm blankets and the soft glow of a nightlight, Richard stood on the balcony of his 23rd floor penthouse, staring out at the sleepless lights of Chicago. The city looked the same, but something inside him didn't. His phone buzzed for the 15th time. Michael again. He didn't pick up. He'd already made his choice. The next morning, sunlight poured into the living room as the smell of waffles filled the air. Emily padded out barefoot in one of Richard's oversized t-shirts, her hair damp from a warm bath she hadn't wanted to end. "Is this really your place?" she asked, clutching Teddy, still a little unsure. "It's ours now," he replied, "as long as you want it to be." She smiled a small, cautious smile and sat down to eat. She didn't ask for much, didn't demand toys or games. She only asked, "Are you going to work today?" He paused. "I was supposed to," he said, "but I called in sick." Emily giggled. "Are you really sick, just of pretending everything's okay when it's not?" Later that day, Richard made a call to a lawyer he trusted. He didn't know what legal route was possible, yet only that he couldn't let Emily go back to sleeping on sidewalks and hoping strangers would feed her. "What are my options for keeping her safe with me?" he asked. "You can request emergency temporary custody," the lawyer said. "But it's a long road after that, Richard. You'll need home inspections, therapy sessions, social worker visits. They'll dig deep into your life. I don't care. Send me the forms." That evening, after Emily had drawn on half the refrigerator with a box of crayons and asked if it was okay to name each flower in the apartment, Richard knew he was already in too deep. But not everyone shared that joy. 3 days later, as Richard returned home from submitting his first custody request, he found a black town car parked outside his building. The doorman gave him a tight-lipped nod. "Your father's upstairs." Richard's chest tightened. When he opened the door, William Carter was standing in the middle of the living room, perfectly dressed in a gray 3-piece suit, frowning at the crayon drawings taped to the windows. "What the hell is going on here?" Richard closed the door behind him. "Hello to you too, Dad. You haven't answered my calls for days. The board is panicking. The Tokyo deal died. I let it." William turned slowly. "You let it die." "There are more important things than Japanese investors and profit margins." William's eyes narrowed. "Like what, crayons and teddy bears?" As if on cue, Emily walked out of her room holding Teddy. Her smile froze when she saw the stern man in the suit. "Who's he?" she whispered. Richard crouched beside her. "This is my father, William." Emily nodded politely. "Nice to meet you, sir." William didn't return the greeting. Instead, he looked at Richard. "We need to talk. In private." Emily stepped back uncertainly. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, sweetheart," Richard said gently. "Just give us a minute." She slipped away quietly. William didn't wait. "You've lost your mind." Taking in some homeless girl, do you have any idea how this looks to the media, to the shareholders, to the women you date? If a woman can't accept Emily, Richard said, his voice low and calm, then she's not someone I want in my life. William laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're 32. You were supposed to be CEO of the entire Carter Group by the end of this year. Instead, you're playing daddy to a child that isn't even yours. Richard took a long breath. She may not be my blood, but she is mine. And when she grows up, what happens when she finds out she's just a project you picked up off the street? She already knows the truth. And guess what? She still smiles at me like I'm the safest place in the world. William went quiet for a moment. Then he tried a new tactic. You want to help a kid? Fine. Donate to a foundation. Start a scholarship. Don't throw your life away. Richard's jaw clenched. I used to believe that, but I've never slept as peacefully as I have since she got here. From the hallway, a quiet crash. Richard rushed in and found Emily on the floor reaching for Teddy, who had fallen off the bed. Did you hear everything he asked softly? She nodded. Her eyes were glossy. I don't want to ruin your life, Richard. I heard what he said. You haven't ruined anything, he said, kneeling beside her. You've given me a reason to live for something real. She stared at him. You're not going to change your mind, never. Behind them, William stood at the doorway. She doesn't belong here. Richard turned. Then maybe you don't either. Are you telling me to leave? I'm saying if you can't see what I see in her, then you're not welcome in this home. William's face turned dark. You'll regret this. I won't. Not for a second. And with that, William left. Emily sat curled on the bed, knees to her chest. Richard leaned over and whispered, You're not a burden. You're my choice. Every day. She looked up. Can I call you Dad? He didn't speak, just nodded. The word filled the room with more warmth than any fireplace could have given. Thank you so much for staying with Richard and Emily's story. If your family didn't accept your choices, would you still follow your heart like Richard did? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if this story touched you, don't forget to like and share the video. It truly helps us keep telling these stories. Weeks turned into months. Winter melted into spring, and slowly, like a flower unfolding under careful sunlight, Emily began to bloom. The once silent halls of Richard's sleek penthouse now echoed with laughter stories about school and the sound of little feet running to show him a crayon drawing she'd made. The refrigerator was no longer just stainless steel, it was now a gallery. The home office had been transformed into Emily's room. Pastel walls, stuffed animals lining shelves, a small bed with a canopy that she called her princess cloud. It wasn't perfect. Emily still had nightmares sometimes. She'd slip into Richard's room in the middle of the night, whispering that she dreamed he left. Each time he would pull her close, press a hand to her back, and say the same thing. I'm not going anywhere. That promise carried them through interviews with social workers, parenting classes, and home evaluations. Richard had never fought harder for anything in his life. And every time someone asked him why take on a child he didn't have to, he answered, because she saved me first. The morning of the final adoption hearing, Emily sat in the back seat of Richard's car, nervously swinging her legs in her best navy dress. Do you think the judge will say yes? She asked. Richard reached for her hand. I think he'd be a fool not to. She squeezed his fingers. I told Teddy he has to be brave too. I think Teddy's got this. At the courthouse, their social worker, Mrs. Helen Carter, greeted them with a smile. She had been the one to witness how Richard rearranged not just his life, but his entire heart. After months of psychological evaluations, parenting assessments, and drop-in visits, she was the one who signed the final recommendation. Emily, she said softly, you look beautiful today. Emily beamed. My dad helped me braid my hair. He's getting really good at it. In the courtroom, Judge Anderson sat behind a tall oak desk, glasses perched on his nose, reviewing the thick folder labeled Emily Brooks. He looked serious. Emily leaned into Richard's side. The judge motioned her forward. Emily, he said gently, do you understand why you're here today? She nodded. So you can say that I can stay with my dad forever. The judge smiled faintly. And is that what you want? It's all I want, she whispered. What about your biological family? What if someone from your past shows up someday? Emily glanced at Richard, then looked back. If someone wanted me, they would have come already. But my dad came, and he stayed. Judge Anderson leaned back, expression unreadable. Thank you, Emily. You can go back to your seat. Then came Richard's turn. You understand the responsibilities this adoption carries, the judge asked. Yes, Your Honor. You're a single man running a company, and this child has endured trauma. Have you thought about the long-term implications every day, Richard answered. I know it won't always be easy, but nothing that matters ever is. I'm ready. There was a moment of silence. Then the judge closed the folder. After thorough review, and based on the recommendation of the state and the testimony provided here today, I approve the adoption. Emily Brooks will now legally become Emily Carter, daughter of Richard Carter. Richard didn't move. Emily gasped. I'm really your daughter now, she asked, her voice trembling. You always were, Richard whispered. She threw her arms around his neck, nearly knocking him off balance. Forever, forever. The courtroom erupted in soft applause. Even Judge Anderson allowed himself a rare smile. That afternoon, they celebrated with ice cream. Emily chose 3 flavors and insisted Teddy get a napkin hat. They laughed, took pictures, and called Mrs. Parker Lily's grandmother, who cried on the phone and promised to visit soon. But that evening, as the sun dipped low and golden light filled their home, Richard found Emily sitting on the balcony with Teddy on her lap. What are you thinking about? He asked, joining her. She looked up. The night we met, I was cold and hungry and scared. I thought nobody would ever care. Richard swallowed. And now I'm not scared anymore. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Do you still think about your dad? She asked after a pause. Richard sighed. Sometimes. He never called again. Do you miss him? I think I miss the idea of him, but no one should have to choose between love and approval. Emily nodded, quiet for a moment. You chose me, even when it was hard, and I always will. 2 years later, their home was unrecognizable. Not in design, but in life. The walls were filled with framed school drawings, handprints in paint, and photographs of birthday parties, Christmas mornings, and pancake Sundays. A golden retriever named Honey slept by the fireplace, her tail occasionally thumping the floor. On the coffee table sat a scrapbook titled Our Family Created by Emily. Page after page of a story not written by blood, but by love. As Richard flipped through the pages with her that night, she pointed to one photo the day she first called him Dad. I still remember what your voice sounded like that day, she said. Why that one, he asked. Because it was the first time I wasn't just someone, I was someone's. Richard felt the sting of tears. You'll always be someone, Emily. But being your dad, that's the best thing I'll ever be. They sat there side by side, no words needed, just the sound of belonging filling the room. Now let me ask you, have you ever felt like love found you in the most unexpected place? Would you have taken the same leap Richard did? How did this story make you feel? If it touched your heart, please comment, numbering 3 below. If it felt just okay, comment number 2. And if you feel there's something missing, feel free to say, no, part 1. We welcome all thoughts. Also, let us know what country you're watching from. Don't forget to like, send a heart, and share this video with someone who believes in second chances.